Hi, I'm Iris Washington.
Hi, I'm Exxon, and our assigned chapter in Honest Work is Chapter 11, Think Local, Act Global. It talks about ethical behaviors in international business. So, when a business is engaged in multinational activities, there are a variety of important issues that do not have the same easy answer as when you are doing business in one area. So, you have to consider behaviors that are acceptable in your home country as well as your host country. For this video, we decided to take you around the world and show you examples of ethical dilemmas that companies have to face in different countries that are also related to topics that are mentioned in the chapter. So we're going to take a trip to Australia and talk about PETA's campaign against Ralph Lauren and J. Crew.
So I want to introduce a topic that caught my attention in the chapter on value chains. Currently, businesses have become more networked and interconnected with most media outlets, so managers of huge international companies need to be aware that they're going to be the ones that are targeted by smaller corporations when dealing with controversial products. For instance, products involving animal parts used for leather goods, furs, and things like that, even when it's not the fault of their entire company. That's when the responsibility of the stakeholders, suppliers, manufacturers, and what have you needs to step up and take preventative measures. As we all know, PETA is a powerful nonprofit organization that proactively fights for the rights of animal safety. They use media outlets to bring attention and grasp the audience to witness their fight with popular companies. PETA is known for applying pressure on the value chain, and it is smart to go after the larger companies rather than smaller counterparts, just because they'll get most attention from those large companies. An issue arose in October 2013 through February 2014, where PETA insisted consumers and leading fashion retailers such as J. Crew and Ralph Lauren need to stop purchasing and selling wool after an undercover investigation exposed systematic animal abuse in wool industries in Australia and in the U.S. Consequently, 90% of the world's merino wool actually comes from Australia and the US, so this was a big hit for them. The undercover PETA agent captured footage that shows that sheep shearers violently punched, kicked, and threw sheep around during the shearing process. Fortunately, after a group of animal rights supporters gathered outside of J. Crew's flagship store on New York City's Fifth Avenue, the popular Fifth Avenue, um, and showcased footage of PETA's video expose, the retailers decided to ban fur after that campaign. And the group hopes that retailers will set standards for the industry by ditching wool altogether. While I agree with PETA's mission, some highly influential people do not support PETA, such as Kanye. Tell PETA my mink is dragging on the floor. And now we're going to segue into China. We're going to take a trip across the country and discuss the FCPA and bribery issues.
So when you're working for a multinational firm, one of the biggest issues that you have to consider would be bribery. So in America, bribery is considered absolutely unethical, whereas in other countries, it may be necessary if you want to get things done. So going back in history, during the mid-1970s, SEC investigations discovered that over 400 U.S. companies admitted to making illegal payments to foreign government officials, politicians, and political parties that added up to over $300 million. So because of this, the U.S. Congress enacted the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act of 1977 to stop this. The Foreign Corrupt Practice Act is a law known for two of its main provisions. The first one addresses accounting transparency requirements under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, and the other concerning bribery of foreign officials. In FCPA, the anti-bribery provision makes it unlawful for a U.S. firm to make a corrupt payment to a foreign official in order to gain business. But this became a problem because while U.S. firms are not allowed to bribe the foreign officials or government, businesses from other countries were still bribing the officials, and that puts the U.S. firms at a disadvantage. So eventually, the idea of facilitating payments was created. Facilitating payments are one of the few exceptions from anti-bribery prohibition of Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. These payments are usually paid to public officials so they can speed up government activities in the process. So, for example, payment is not considered a bribe when its sole purpose is to expedite or secure the performance of a routine government process in order to get things done in countries where it will be necessary to make the bureaucratic process run more smoothly. But how to determine whether it's a bribe or a facilitating payment is very difficult since there's a lot of gray areas. So in China, many Chinese business relationships are backed by close personal relationships or guanxi. So if you want to be successful doing business in China, you will have to participate in networking activities such as taking them out to dinner, entertainment, traditional gift giving, and even cash gifts before the business even begins. All of these can lead to business questioning, is what I'm about to do ethical? In China, there are also anti-corruption laws, so it's very important to understand business courtesies while avoiding the typical gray areas where international companies have to navigate between local business practices or expectations and the boundaries set out by the FCPA and the Chinese anti-corruption law in order to avoid getting in trouble. So linking this back to the book, kind of like what the saying of when in Rome, do as the Romans do, is where this will apply. According to cultural relativism, which is mentioned in the book, no culture's ethics are better than any others, so there are no international rights or wrongs. So especially if not doing what the business culture in other countries require you to do will make you miss business opportunities, and I think it's okay to do it as long as your actions does not harm anybody or any others. Now we're going to go to our final destination, New Delhi, India, to discuss human rights issues.
In recent years, there has been a dramatic growth in companies contracting out production processes to suppliers in developing countries, creating a division of labor in apparel where big companies concentrate on marketing and product design in the States, but rely on subcontractors in China, India, wherever else to manufacture these clothes according to specific expectations that Gap and every other big retailer has. Although major U.S. retailers have codes of conduct on human and labor rights, they cannot always control what goes on in factories located overseas. Um, Gap is a perfect example of this. They have manufacturing plants in New Delhi that was revealed as a sweatshop using children as young as 10 years old for free labor. These children were working 16-hour days, hand sewing clothes, sitting on hard wooden stools. On top of that, they were not getting paid for their labor because they were considered pupils and learning how to craft these clothes, and also they were paying off a fee. Gap's own policy states that if it discovers children being forced into working in these manufacturing facilities run by some subcontractors and personally handcrafting clothes for the company, then that contractor must remove the child from the workplace, provide him or her with access to schooling and a living wage, and guarantee the opportunity of work on reaching the legal working age. Gap Incorporated has a rigorous factory monitoring program in place, and last year they revoked their approval for 23 factories for failing to comply with their standards of human rights and labor laws.
So now that we're back in the US, in conclusion, some of the main points that you should take away from this chapter is when you're thinking about ethical behaviors, you should follow these three principles. The first one is that you should have respect for core human values, which determines the absolute moral threshold of all business activities. The second one is that you should have respect for local traditions. And finally, you should believe the context matters when deciding what is right and what is wrong. With that being said, here are two situations that we want you to think about. Which principles does each one violate? And is there any way to make the situation better, or is the situation considered morally acceptable?
So the first situation is from case 11.3, where Sarah is a strong candidate and constantly got high ratings from her superiors at a security bank of the American continent. But with her initial position, she needed to travel to Mexico, where the banks were more aware of her being a woman, and the final decision on the work that she did were handled by male representatives of the bank stationed in Mexico. When she filed a complaint to her superior, he said that he understands where she's coming from, but their clients just don't understand a woman in authority. So he suggested that she should put up a front in front of them and act as if she had no responsibilities, but in reality, she was responsible for those clients' accounts. So, Exxon, what is your take on this? What do you think she should have done, or what principles are being violated here?
So with this case, I think it does not follow the first principle, which is that you should have respect for core human values. Since Sarah is the one that would be doing all the work, she should get some recognition. She should get the recognition not only from her boss but also from her clients. However, it's very difficult to say since the culture at where she's working at it does not understand when a woman's in authority. So in that case, she should do what her boss suggests, since it's the second principle is to have respect for local traditions. Now, the next case is case 11.1, where you are the new chief executive officer of Stratton Oil Company, which is an exploration and drilling firm under contract to a major multinational oil company. You have received several reports of unhealthy labor practices on the platforms at the offshore drilling operations in Africa. Some of these labor practices include separation of African workers from the other workers, smaller cabins that fitted way more African workers than the comfortable rooms that were assigned to the black expatriates, and also other different treatments in things such as medical care and shift changes. But you also know that there has always been a disparity in living conditions on the drilling platform. What do you think about this, Eris?
So first and foremost, let me just point out that I believe that most of these inequalities presented in this case should not be tolerable in any moral sense, for that matter. This case violates the first principle, stating that businesses should have respect for core human values. Respect for human dignity and basic rights was violated when that certain company chose to allow the expatriate workers to leave the premises and go into town in case of an injury or emergency. But the unskilled workers had to stay in the dormitories and bear the pain. So therefore, I just think that this company overall has been very unethical in following these core principles and even the basic human rights principles. So,
So, what do you think?